Stroke is a focal neurological deficit, which is of no other origin but cardiovascular in origin.
Depression is the leading cause of disability. Depression on its own is a persistent feeling of sadness, persistent feeling of hopelessness.
Hello viewers, welcome to this week's episode on Health Watch on Advent Cable Network Nigeria. I am Angela Mweze. COVID-19 continues to be a global challenge since it was first discovered in 2019, even though so many medical professionals believe that we are getting closer to the solution and our worst days are gradually coming behind us. As at today, globally, there are been over 130 million confirmed cases and over 2.5 million deaths recorded. America still records the highest number of infections with over 50.5 million confirmed cases, while Africa and the Western Pacific records the lowest with over 2.8 million and 1.6 million respectively. On a brighter note, Nigeria has recorded its lowest daily figure of new COVID-19 infections in about 6 months, with 240 new cases reported on Sunday, 28th of February, which is a marginal decrease from the 341 new cases recorded the previous day. This brings the total number of infections in Nigeria to 115,658. Now, it may not be new to you that the world has been battling a new strain of the COVID-19 virus since December of 2020, which seemed to present a different characteristics from the previous one. On the other hand, vaccines have been developed to inoculate the population against the virus, and this, interestingly, has raised a lot of concerns among people, even amongst medical experts. On the program today, we shall understand this new strain and how it differs from the previous strain. We shall also understand the COVID-19 vaccine and how it can prevent us from contracting the COVID-19 virus. My guest today on the program is Dr. Omokudu Oyesaimore, a consultant urologist at the National Hospital, Abuja. I think I've gotten the name wrong again. You're welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me here.
It's good to have you.
And then good afternoon, viewers.
And thank you for joining us today on the program. So we are discussing COVID-19, of course, the new strain and the vaccine. Now, in December, the whole world started dealing. I think towards September, well, between August, September, there seemed to be a decline. Everybody went back to their normal life and were just enjoying themselves. And suddenly in December, we're hearing that, oh, the cases were increasing, people were dying more, something was different. But now we started hearing there's a new strain of the virus. Now, what is just coming to my mind?
Well, if you go back to about 100 years ago, when the Spanish flu incidents occurred, you find that there was actually a second surge. You know, a lot of reasons were given for that, you know, but the hallmark for viral infections is that if you look at the molecular structure of these organisms, they are quite small. They are arranged in sequences, you know, a lot of proteins to make up their genome. For any reason, either for mechanical reasons, medications, or maybe it's temperature, heat. I'm sure you've heard that the COVID virus is very unstable, you know, in the face of rising temperatures. You can have deletions of these proteins.
The proteins that are assembled to form the virus.
Exactly. And thereafter you have a new strain. Now, like I said, it's a hallmark of viral infections. You have new strains all the time, but the question is, what is the clinical significance of the new strain? Now, looking at the new strain in totality, you find out that it is the UK strain and the South African strains have tend to have drawn much more attention to the world. Now, this is because they are usually more effective and then they are more pathogenic, causing more severe illnesses.
All right.
Now, I fear the worst because during the first phase of the disease, a lot of persons were able to adhere to the physical distancing, face masks and all that. But over time, the incidence, of course, that reduced the incidence.
Yes, of course.
And then over time, people begin to wear out. Let's be very frank about the whole thing. And then they began to drop in their in this social distances. They began to care less. If you look at what has been happening, you find out that there have been more gatherings, more parties, and all the rest of that. And so that alone had given a setting for a second surge. Okay, and then airports started to open, more persons began to travel, and then you had the mutation in the UK.
Okay.
And then when Nigerians come from there,
of course,
there's a risk of bringing them. There's a risk of bringing the SA strain and all the rest of that. But the point is that even in Nigeria, they have found some strains that are different from the initial strain.
Even within our country?
Within Nigeria.
Okay.
It's been reported in LUT, in this human and zoonotic center by one Dr. Omilabu. Okay. Now, like I said before, it's about the clinical significance.
Okay.
It's not compulsory that when you have a different strain, it must be more virulent.
It could just be a different strain.
Yes,
it wouldn't make much difference.
It may not be as effective as the original
one. Okay.
And that's where the blessing of the mutation might come in, because some persons who now get infected with the weaker strain can develop what we call cross immunity. Okay, or even a form of herd immunity, where you have an infection, you develop response
to it. Yeah.
You develop some degree of immunity to that, and then when you now get infected by the coronavirus itself, with tougher strains now, okay, you're able to mount sufficient immune response, and then you fight the disease. So it's not compulsory that once you have a different strain, it must be more virulent. It must cause more illness. No. So like I said, it's just those ones, the UK strain and the South African strain, that have actually caused more problems. And then if you look at the history of vaccines, with the use of vaccines, they are the ones that have shown some resistance to the vaccines that have been produced by Pfizer, Moderna, and then AstraZeneca. They have reported less efficacy. In South Africa. So basically, like I said, once you do more sequencing, you are likely to find more strains, but it doesn't amount to a more severe disease.
But it seemed like there were more infections the second time. Even the first time, I think now they were recording some, the number of, especially in this part of the world.
Yes.
Where we
now, one problem here in a country like Nigeria, a lot of persons who went ill unreported. People used to take it like simple malaria symptoms, because in fairness, it presented like that. Some of them will just have GI symptoms. Some will go ahead and have upper respiratory tract infections. Now, the ones that will run to the hospital are the ones that feel life-threatening.
All right.
You get what I mean? So a lot of them went. So it may not be conclusive to say we're having more infections now. But I think what is conclusive is the reporting is more now.
Right.
Because
and the testing is more now, isn't it?
Well, of course, we have improved in testing, and so technically we will detect more cases. All right, and then the strains will force them more now to the hospital. Because their presentation now is not the mild cases that you just play with drugs in your house, you get well and everybody is fine. But you now have cases that are either moderately severe, where you have some mild breathing difficulty, or even very severe necessitating hospital admission. And then people are running up and down. So I think what is established is that yes, there are the figures have risen, But it doesn't. I don't believe that if all was well, even in the first phase, we might have seen something different.
Okay.
You know, but what is clear is that the severity for this one is worse than what we had before. Now, but it doesn't equally mean that is. I mean, any COVID now has to do with the new strain.
New strain, yes.
You know, even the old strains.
The fact there's a new strain does not mean the old one has gone
Yes,
somewhere. Yes.
yes.
Okay.
It's
That's okay. Now, there's a question that keeps coming to my mind. Africa seemed to have recorded some pretty low levels of the. I keep asking this question, and I believe today I'm going to get a very good answer. You know, compared to the United States that have all the technology, and you would expect them to have, even they thought, you know, we will be in trouble in Africa, in this part of the world. You know, we're going to die on the streets if they could. So what do you think? What did Africa get right this time that is making them? I mean, 1 million, 1 point something million to 50.5.
I wish we got something right. It would have been nice, you know. And when I'm asked this question, my last comment is usually the fact that, which I'm going to make first today, is that not perhaps, we're favored by God. We have always been a lucky set of human beings. At times you wonder how Nigerians pull through these difficulties in this country. You know, on a lighter note, a boxer was asked some questions. Or a question, they asked him, how come you're able to achieve knockout to your opponents? He said, he thinks about the problems of his country. He puts all that anger into his right fist. And then when he drops it on the boxer's face, the boxer goes down flat. So it gives you an image of the nature of system that will run. It's about the system, actually. Now, but luckily, we didn't see what happened in the US, for example, in other European countries. Now, the same happened in Asia. They seem to have handled the viral infections better, you know, than those in Europe and in the US. Now, it's not because they are more prayerful than those people. Well, now, people have tried to explain, perhaps it's the malaria endemicity. You know, people have looked at previous immunizations. They have talked about BCG before and all that.
That was what I was thinking. Now, that was what was coming to my mind.
Wonder drug, the ivermectin, that is being used right now. Okay. I remember in those days as a child, somebody brought ivermectin to my house. There was an outbreak of river blindness. And so virtually everybody got ivermectin. Looking at the tablet, I said, oh, this is the drug this man brought. And I remember I took it in those days. What am I saying? Our attitude generally towards vaccination is a lot better than what you have outside this country. Now, I'll give you an example. In the face of natural disaster, you tell Americans, leave the city. Some of them will not leave. Because they believe, and true to their belief, when they cry for help,
somebody comes.
They will get emergency help. Helicopters will come and leave them out of that place. So they don't tend to take vaccination as seriously as we do here. So perhaps we may have developed some immunity, you know, and then our lifestyle generally, you know, I was in France at the point, and I discovered that all their meat was not was it as cooked as, let me not use the word properly,
very high temperature.
Was it as cooked as what we do here? You know, and I was looking at it, I said, okay, they are very sure of their veterinary services, and they are sure that there's nothing like tapeworm and all the rest of that, and the hygiene is there and all that, so they don't mind. They just parboil it.
Standards you have to keep up to do certain things.
But over here, you go to the abattoir, you don't want to go there because it will be difficult for you to stay away from meat. So you're not sure of the quality of meat that you have bought, and so you then do a lot of cooking. What am I trying to say? Well, perhaps we've been exposed to all forms of illnesses in the past. You know, and who knows, we may have developed some form of immunity also. Because I'm sure we'll talk about the vaccines. The common cold, the adenovirus that causes the common cold, for example, is one of the viruses that was used by some of the companies to develop these vaccines. So we still do not know exactly why, or rather, but we still do not know exactly the reason. But these are things that you can think of. But all in all, we'll just say thank God, because it would have been horrible. I don't think we'll have the system to match a very virulent infection.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're just going to go for a break. When we come back, then we'll now start talking about the vaccine that I think, thank God, has just arrived. We'll just talk about it. Okay. So we'll be right back, viewers.
There are a lot of false information about the coronavirus. These are the facts. People of all ages can be affected by the coronavirus. However, older people and people with pre-existing medical conditions such as asthma, diabetes, heart diseases are more vulnerable to the disease. It is not for old people alone. Gargling salt and warm water or chewing garlic and ginger cannot prevent the virus. Drinking alcohol, hot lemon, palm oil or chloroquine will not kill the virus. The virus cannot be transmitted through mosquito bites. Antibiotics do not work against the viruses. Antibiotics work only against bacteria. Boiling pineapple peels, lime, and ginger does not kill the virus. Putting raw onions in rooms will not ward off the virus. Using or spraying Dettol, special oils, and water all over your body cannot kill the virus. There is no scientific evidence that cooking, drinking, or eating any of these is an effective treatment for coronavirus. Do not self-medicate and take responsibility by sharing only verified messages from health authorities such as NCDC, Federal Ministry of Health, and WHO.
Welcome back, viewers. Before we went on the break, we were discussing COVID-19, the new strain, and the vaccine. And my guest is still here with us, and it's Dr. Omokudu. Thank you very much, sir, for the first one. At least we've gotten that established, that God was really on our side. On that side. Let me pick that first, your landing statement, and make it the first now in my introduction. So God was really with us.
Yes,
and then there's so many.
He has always been on our side. I'm sure he will not leave us.
He will not leave us at this point in time. Yes. So thank God that he's always with us. So now, good thing, the vaccine has arrived in Nigeria. But first of all, the treatment, because this is the fastest vaccine that I can remember or have read of that was done ever for any ailment. Maybe there is in the past, but this is the fastest that at least I know for myself. But the first question is vaccine the only way to manage or treat COVID-19? Is that the only way is vaccine the only way? Can we have a treatment, or that's the best form? I think you understand my question.
Now, if you go back to history and what has been happening in the field of medicine, we've not had a breakthrough with treatment of viral infections.
Okay.
Now, if you remember all your immunizations you do as a child are for viruses, measles, polio, and all the rest of that. So it appears to be the way to go, you know. And you now have an infection that is ravaging the entire world. This is not the time to waste time and then begin to try out a medication. Although ivermectin has done a very good job, you know, with regards to treatment, and people have gotten very good responses. Okay, but you find out that the best way to attack it is to build people to a state where they can sustain themselves in the face of infection. Okay. Now, first of all, what do you mean by vaccines? These are just drugs that are given to people, okay, that make them develop immunity, you know, getting them to a stage where in the face of an attack by a virus, you are able to fight it on your own. You don't need any external medication. Now, it doesn't mean that you will never get infected. Okay, so the fact that you take COVID-19, what do you call it, vaccine, doesn't mean that that is the end. You could have COVID-19, just classically what you have in measles.
Okay.
You know, but when you now have it, it's usually very mild. Okay, so if you're able to immunize people globally, okay, such that the infection is not having any clinical effect, you find out that it reduces the rate of transmission. Then over time, just like the Spanish flu did disappear, okay, it could equally disappear. So when you're talking about vaccines, it's just what you have developed to raise the immunity of the person, you know. And then looking at the speed, you know, the technologies used are not new, okay. If you're taking Pfizer, for example, Pfizer vaccine was developed in conjunction with biotech.
Okay.
Biotech is a laboratory that has been working on all this. For, you know, a few years ago, we had this surge of Ebola and all that.
Yeah.
Now, the world didn't go to sleep. Some vaccines are out, you know. So those technologies have been in existence. Now, what I think the common ones, you have Pfizer, biotech, and then you have the Moderna.
Okay, Moderna.
Okay. Now, I've mentioned those two because they are the way they develop their vaccines is a bit different from AstraZeneca and Janssen.
Just before you go ahead, just to break down, I know it can be a little difficult to explain the concept of the whole protein code, injecting it into. It might be a little, but the easiest way you can explain it so that it can help us understand.
That's where I'm going to.
Okay, all right.
And the plan is to make it as simple as possible.
Yes.
I know the audience that I'm talking to. Okay. Now, like I said, if you look at the structure of these organisms, you find out that they are, even the human beings, everything down to the genetic level, you know, their protein sequences are arranged in a particular way to give a particular response upon particular stimulus. Okay. So what Pfizer and Moderna did was if you look at the virus, you know, it looks like it's round with some spikes.
Spikes on top, yes.
Yes. Now, those spikes are spike proteins. It is with those spikes that the virus gets attached to the organism, okay, and then carries moves on with all the steps that result in your clinical symptoms. So, but the question now is, are you able to mount some degree of response against it? The answer is yes. But if you look at the immune system, okay, there are some non-specific cells, what we call the non-specific immunity in the system. Some macrophages, neutrophils, they are just moving around. In the face of infection, they are the ones that come in. They attack and destroy. But because of the virulence, they are not able to do so much justice. Now, it depends on the degree of your immunity. If your immunity is strong, that's why the elderly, you know, you want to warn them, you know, be careful about the infection because you are worried about their immunity, okay? If you have those with diabetes that have depressed immunity and all the rest of that, okay? So you're able to mount some degree of response. But what is important is there's a specific immune response whereby antibodies are formed against specific organisms such that if you have that infection again, it's easy those guys are circulating, they are asleep. They are soldiers. Once you wake them up, they take action. And that's what happens in the face of measles.
Okay. That's why when you have measles once or chicken pox, then
they say you have a lifelong immunity because you now have the antibodies against them. Now, it doesn't mean that you won't have that infection. So what they did, Pfizer and Co. and Pfizer and Moderna, was that that spike protein, they were able to produce something similar to it. It takes a lot of genetic engineering, okay, which they linked to a lipid nanoprotein. That was supposed to help the vaccine penetrate the human body. Okay. And then now, of course, when you give that their vaccine, like I said, the first line of action comes into play, attacks.
So the vaccine kind of produces
it causes a pseudo infection. Let me use that word. Okay. And then it is attacked just like a normal setting.
But it doesn't have the main.
No, but the aim is that having brought that similar structure that looks like the spike proteins in, you want to stimulate production of antibodies against that spike protein, which eventually happens. So that in the event that you now have an attack,
again,
you have an infection of coronavirus now, okay? Those antibodies that have been developed against those spike proteins recognizes the spike proteins on the virus as though it's the same they saw before, and then they are channeled to attack
immediately.
Attack it, all right? So that's what Moderna did. Now, but AstraZeneca did something a bit different. That's why you start hearing some of them are RNA vaccines, some are DNA vaccines. What AstraZeneca did was to go and engineer the gene
of the spike protein
that produces the spike protein in the virus. Okay, put it into an adenovirus, sort of modifying the adenovirus. Okay, as their vaccine. So that's what they now give. That's what they now give to the recipients. Okay. Subsequently, those genes stimulate production of those spike proteins that you now attack, and then you eventually develop antibodies against the coronavirus. So in the face of infection, okay, you're able to attack it, like somebody who has had coronavirus in the past. Okay. Now, what's the name of this? Is it Novavax? Novavax is the third mechanism that I'd like to talk about. What Novavax did was like a more natural process. Okay. They actually took the spike protein or so and then put in a carrier. Okay. They sort of attenuate it. All right. So they make it less. Virulent. So it's safer than that. And then place in a carrier and then give to the recipient.
So everything is to stimulate a response.
The whole idea, whatever mechanism you take, is to stimulate the response against coronavirus. Okay.
And in stimulating that response, they kind of create a memory.
Yes. Now, those antibodies exist as memory cells. So in the event of a proper, what I'm trying to explain to you now is that they sort of did what looks like a pseudo infection. So when you now have a proper infection, it now acts like a reinfection. And already you are battle ready. You get what I mean? And the only thing I will say is that Novavax vaccine seemed to be the only one that is more effective against the South African strain. You know, I talked about South African strain and mutation as being the most important in terms of mutation. It has shown very good response. I think I heard at the point they had to stop AstraZeneca vaccines because they weren't getting response with the South African strain. So I think the options are there. So apart from just procuring vaccines to give, you need to be sure of the strain you are giving. You know, and then to be able to target. It just means that you must do some sequencing. It will not stop. From time to time, keep checking what strain am I dealing with. You know, look at the behavior, and then you see which vaccine does better. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So there are different types of vaccine. They were all developed by different technology.
Yes.
But everything is trying to stimulate a response.
The whole idea is to get what I describe as when you give a vaccine, you are doing vaccination.
Okay.
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 As opposed to inoculation, where you are giving the actual organism to the individual.
Okay.
Now, when you vaccinate, you want to get the person to a state of immunization.
Okay.
Such that it's able to mount adequate response against that particular infection. Yeah.
Okay. So that's then clear. So now, this vaccine, earlier last year, and I know you must have heard about the whole 5G and the whole conspiracy and all of that was happening. Because somehow, in a very subtle way, this is me from a street lady, someone that I just meet with people every day. Some people still believe that, they want to put something in their body, in your body, to control your thinking or to control and monitor you wherever you are in the world. And America is trying to be the big, there's so many things going out there.
I'm usually not afraid to discuss this issue, because if you look at all I call them conspiracy theories, for and against. A lot was said even when people were indoors, locked down from the first strain. It was alleged that some certain persons were laying cables for 5G, and all the rest of that, and then the fear that people want to control, Well, it's not out of place. The reason is that these guys have made sensors, very micro sensors, that they can instill into people, and then they can monitor. All right, but before any vaccine is deployed, okay, for example, with the FDA, for example, they needed an emergency approval before it can sell in the US. Some degree of the WHO approval, but for any country, you must be able to screen. Now, when I mean screen, is not necessarily, there's not too much. You should be able to follow up the development process and be sure of the persons and the hands. Well, I don't see Nigerian government, subjecting its people to control by external forces. So I expect NAFDAC to do their jobs. Like I said, a lot of conspiracy theories. There are a lot of videos circulating where people have talked about achieving, what do you call it, one world order.
Yeah, exactly. One world order to control
vaccination. Now, but if you really look at it, if you want to, now everybody is scrambling for vaccines. The whole world is scrambling for vaccines. So you find out that there is a common problem in the world, and so people will tend to accept vaccination now. All right. So if you want to do anything negative, this is the best time. People have always seen that is a way to achieve whatever they want to do.
Yeah, but the point desperation.
Yes. So you create a sort of panic, and then and then you now bring in what you want to do. But I still don't see NAFDAC as a body that will subject itself to such conspiracy. So I expect that whatever they are bringing in is genuine. And people should equally be worried about the source of their vaccinations.
Okay.
All right. A lot of fake vaccines now will come in.
Will now come up in the market.
You don't know their intention. They will be cheaper. Some of them are very expensive, like the Pfizer Biotech. Apart from the problem of storage, cost too is there. So I just think that people should be careful. It's like you're going to buy a drug in the pharmacy. You are wary of the nature of drugs that you buy. Some of them can be poisonous. Some of them can be when I say poisonous, perhaps they are not properly made.
Yeah.
I've seen some videos where somebody was putting umu inside stout to make it look like stout.
Wow.
You know. So I just think that it's a call for vigilance.
Okay.
Whatever you are doing, be sure that it is genuine.
Okay.
You know, it is properly registered and you get it from the proper channel.
We're going to talk more on this advice because I think that's a core part of this discussion today, what people should look out for. It's a core part of our discussion. But we'll go on a quick break, and when we come back, we'll then continue the discussion on this COVID vaccine.
No problem.
We'll be right back, viewers.
COVID-19 is not airborne. The virus that causes the disease is transmitted through droplets. When people cough or sneeze, droplets land on nearby surfaces that you may touch. Therefore, clean surfaces regularly. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, or mouth. Wash your hands with soap and water or alcohol-based hand rub. Maintain a physical distance of at least 2 meters from people, always. And if you are ill, wear a face mask to avoid infecting others.
Welcome back, viewers. Before we went on the break, we were still discussing COVID-19, the new strain, and the vaccines, and my guest is still here. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for so far the information we have gotten and learned about.
Thanks again for having me.
Yes, it's always exciting. I think I'll still be pulling you back again for more. All right, so now we're discussing the COVID, the vaccine, and we found out that yes, the NAFDAC, our country, would not subject us to most of this conspiracy theory that people bring up, you know, all over the place. But now, what is coming to my mind is the conditions for the storage of this vaccine. I know some of them you have to store in very cold temperatures, over more than freezing points. You know, how prepared do you think we are to handle some of this requirement for the vaccine?
You know, like I've always said, Africa is a favored country.
Okay.
Nigeria is a favored country.
Okay.
Now, I wish we had only Pfizer and biotech. We would have been in trouble. Okay? But luckily for us, there are options.
Okay.
Viable options. The AstraZeneca vaccine is stored at 2 to 8 degrees centigrade, all right?
Okay.
Which is the same temperature that you use for other vaccines.
Okay.
And Nigeria has been vaccinating.
So the one we have
received,
received, we just received the AstraZeneca.
Yes.
Okay.
Nigeria has been vaccinating all these years. Like I said, we've been doing better in terms of attitude towards vaccination than even in US, for example, where they find it difficult to get people to accept vaccines and all that. Okay, so storage for AstraZeneca is not a problem. Okay, at least if that could give you a window of 3 months.
Okay.
Perhaps you might need to get it down to -26 to be able to store it for, I think, a year or 2. I'm not so sure. But I mean, if you want to distribute vaccines, you should be able to distribute it within 3 months.
Within 3 months, yeah.
You know, so that shouldn't be a problem in terms of choice. But the only problem with AstraZeneca is that the efficacy is about 60%. Now, it just means that your immunity is not 0. And then, first of all, let me talk about the cost. If I compare AstraZeneca, which is about, I think what I heard was £3 or thereabout, compared to Pfizer, that was about 20 pounds or there, but when the UK was considering which one to use and all that, so we found that it was really more cost effective for them to use the AstraZeneca. All right. So if you have opted for AstraZeneca, okay, you find out that challenge is not there in terms of storage. You know, I should be able to give it within 3 months, like I said. Now you have a problem if you're opting for Pfizer biotech.
Yeah, because even storage is a bit
difficult. Apart from the fact that there's storage, the transportation.
Yeah.
Because vaccines are stored in a cold chain system. Cold chain just means that at any point, Even at the point of transit, they must be maintained at a certain temperature. All right? So for those who are relying on Pfizer had to get a company that will not only just set out vaccines and say, okay, move. They have to monitor the vaccines. So they use a GPS tracker to monitor the temperature, to make sure it doesn't go below, I mean, it doesn't go below the required temperature. Because that's the only way it can maintain the efficacy. All right?
Yeah.
So like I said, we're always a lucky people, you know. So we have a viable option.
And you talked about 16%, 60% immunity. You
yes, I was going to talk about 60% immunity. Now, efficacy, not immunity.
Sorry, efficacy, yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean that, okay, Pfizer and Co., some of them are as high as 90. Novavax about 84 or thereabout, you know. Now, it doesn't mean that, how do I put it now? Let's take 100, It doesn't mean that your result, you know, your result will be as stated. Now, people already have some degree of immunity, especially Africans.
Yeah.
So let's say you're able to have an immunity to a degree of 30%, for example, and somebody is adding 60%. That's about 90%. So that's the way to look at it.
Okay.
You get what I mean?
Okay. So the Nigerians shouldn't see the 60% as
a
they're
drawback.
not doing you as a drawback. It's actually
now, let's even leave it at the 60%. Okay? If you're able to mount 60% increase, all right, as against the whatever level you had before, is a better result. You are going to move some patients, a lot of patients from the level of severity, to from those with very severe diseases to as low as even mild diseases. So whatever way, the results, you know, will always be there. The fact that you have a vaccine doesn't mean that it's going to work for everybody.
Okay.
It may not.
There may still be some people that...
Yes, it may still be some persons who may not respond
well.
Just the way in the course of trials, some people were giving these vaccines and they developed full-blown coronavirus infections. And they were managed just like every other patient. You get what I mean?
So that's why the check-in, I think there's observation after receiving.
Of course.
You know, you have to be observed.
Because definitely when you are giving a drug, you expect some reactions. Even if it's a point where you had the needle prick, the pain alone is a complication. Some of them will have an allergy to any degree, even as bad as respiratory problems in terms of the allergy. You know, some will have headaches. Some have reported Bear's palsy. There's weakness of part of the face. You know, a few persons have reported that. You know, and then a lot of persons will have reactions that have not been documented. So just like every other drug, once you begin to administer the drugs, you do a post-surveillance. You know, where cases will come, you know, oh, this one had this and all that. And then you begin to look at the effects. That's why some drugs have actually been withdrawn.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
You know, even after many years, where the companies would have made their money, you know, those drugs have been withdrawn because they picked some complications. So the race continues. Even after taking the vaccine, you look out for whatever complaints you have. But the ET is to report it as quickly as possible. You know, so that they then look at what may have resulted to it. Why did the other persons not have the same problem and all the rest of that? But by and large, I think the prospect is good.
That's good.
The options are there. Storage should not be a problem. For procurement.
So we're fine. We're fine with the vaccine that has been received.
Yes.
We are okay. We don't need to panic or worry about anything or think that the government is bringing in something to hurt anybody.
No,
or sending America to monitor us.
I don't see the government as an organization that
would want to do such a thing.
Its citizens to control by external forces.
Okay.
But once you do that, you no longer have a government. You know, in a matter of time, even you yourself will begin to answer to foreign powers.
Foreign
and all
powers,
the rest
yes.
of that.
And I know the president and the vice, I think they've picked a date or something that they will come up to be the first to take the jab and put it on national TV so that everybody will know.
Well, I watched, what's his name?
The United States President Joe Biden.
Joe Biden take the 2 shots, you know, and it was nice.
Yeah.
But he led by example. But you know, when people still keep talking about conspiracy, and all the rest of that, I think the director of Pfizer, there's a video that came out. The man was yet to receive his vaccine. They were asking him, and he was talking about his age group not being at risk, his age and all that. So
he's younger.
when people now tell you, that this thing is suspicious, you don't blame them.
Yeah.
But I think it's for the government to reassure persons.
Yeah.
You know, we've lost a lot of lives.
Yes.
A lot of persons have been affected
sadly,
by the virus. A lot of persons didn't make it. You know, I know a young girl who was on the verge of formalizing her relationship, and then her so-called fiancé got struck by the virus. You know, so it's something that is quite terrible. And now we're talking about a second wave. Nobody knows if there will be a third wave.
Yeah.
So everybody needs to be careful.
It now. And it's important that everybody gets the vaccine if it's available. And
well, it may be difficult for everybody to get
of
the
course,
vaccine.
yes.
You know, like I said, but the fact is that the whole idea should be to reduce the rate of transmission. You get what I mean? Now, if you decide that you are infected with a virus, and that train must end with you, you stay away from people. You get what I mean? You use your face mask if need be. 14 days after or thereabout, you become non-effective. Even if you are shedding virus at that stage, you are just shedding dead viruses, you know.
Yeah.
So you have been able to stop that line. So it's something that the world needs to understand, that we need to come together and fight. So if we're able to do that, you find out that gradually we'll be able to eliminate the virus. Because if I'm shedding dead viruses, for example, without infecting a single soul, it means I have stopped
that end from
that train from my side. So if it happens with every other person, with support from vaccination, that's why the social distancing thing, the use of face masks, the hand hygiene and all that, must not stop.
Very important to continue. Because some people...
Now, it must not stop. Now, why do I say it must not stop? The fact is that people have been overwhelmed by coronavirus. That's the truth. They are tired of wearing face masks and all that. It's quite stressful. So, but what you need to do is, you want to cut down on your visitations, for example. Whatever you are doing, you want to cut down on it so that you don't have to wear the face masks for too long. You return back to your house where the environment is more controlled. You take away your face masks, and then you live a more happy life with your family. Okay? And then other measures must be maintained. The campaign, people must be reminded. For example, this face mask thing you do, apart from the fact that it's protecting you, it helps to remind you of the season that we are in. And therefore, you remember to wash your hands, you remember to sanitize, you know, as the case may be. So it's something that is a struggle that everybody must take very, very seriously, especially the government, in terms of campaign, must continue to get people to be aware. Let's accept it, and then we'll deal with it together. Just for a while, I'm sure it will go.
Just have, at least some experts are saying that the dark days are getting behind us gradually. But we hope we'll do the right thing.
We hope that the dark days will actually get behind us.
Please, let's get behind us all the time.
We hope that.
Yeah. Wow, thank you so much for coming on the program. We've learned so much today on this vaccine. At least we know now. We'll do other sessions where we'll talk about when more details have come on this COVID-19. You know, on how to receive the vaccine and all of that. We'll still, talk more. Information will keep coming out. as regards.
Yeah, the issue of receiving the vaccines, is important. And I think the government will come out with a pattern in a short while, and then we're expected to key into it. I think the emphasis will be on frontline healthcare workers. Because if a doctor carries it and gets to see 60 patients, he might have given about 10 persons, and that's a wide chain, And then people who lead gatherings, for example, too, are people of interest. So let's start from there. But what I keep saying is that the social distancing thing, the behavioral changes have worked, and we must keep it up. I like to give this, last season, the Formula 1 season, where they moved from places to places, country to country, they made about 78,000, no, is it 78,000 total tests they did for everybody. Wow. And only 78 was positive. That's 1 in 1,000.
1,000,
And you find that what they did was that they ensured that everybody was on face masks. There were no crowds in the centers, so social distancing was better. And then when you were positive, you isolate for some time and all that. Then they did a lot of testing. 78,000 was quite high.
A lot,
So it's an example for us. Let's keep up the good work, while we await the help from the vaccines.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you so much for coming to the program. We have learned a whole lot, and I'll pull you back again.
No problem. I'm always available.
You're available. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you, viewers, for staying with us on the program. We have learned so much today on the vaccine, and at other times in the program, we'll bring up more information as we get more from the government. Thank you so much. I'm Angela Nweze. See you next week. Goodbye.